before we start?
I guess we started. That's
Oh wait, we started.
a second. It's a little. Hello, everybody. If you can hear me, can you just please say hi? If you can hear me, can you just sort of type in the chat box on the right-hand side? It's really been a long time since we've done one of these. Sorry, I realized I'm showing my my quarantine chin fat, so I'm propping my laptop up on a pile of Marvel Milestone editions, just to prove that I am not yanking anyone's chain. Because if you can't afford the early issues of Spidey, the best bet is to buy yourself a set of Marvel Milestone editions. They make great toilet reading. Good afternoon, and thank you all for showing up on this very weird Wednesday afternoon. I was going to say Thursday. I don't even know what day it is. Hang on a second. There you go. Sean was sitting there quietly and taking up all the space. So I'm going to get on stage for a couple of minutes. If you don't know who I am, then I don't know why you're here. My name is Ashley Cotter-Cairns. I am the founder and part owner of sellmycomicbooks.com, hopefully a website you're all familiar with. And my business partner and co-host, Sean, is right down there. There he is. And he's very proud of his dollar store globe he has in the background there. I think we can do a side-by-side layout. I don't know how that works. It worked earlier. Why is it not working now? Why is that not working? That's weird. Oh, there you go.
All right.
So we have decided that after a hiatus of maybe 3 years, I think, we decided to do a webinar today, partly because there is literally nothing else to do anywhere apart from watch Netflix and eat. And I really think that I was thinking to myself, there's got to be something we can do for people. And there's plenty of people who are volunteering their time at charities, and there are people who are nurses and doctors and garbage men and grocery store clerks and people like that who are doing sterling work. And I'm a coward, so I'm not going to do any of those things. But I thought, you know what? I have this webinar software that we haven't used for 2 years or 3 years, and I have my laptop and I have Sean, and between us, we could do a webinar. And this is not exactly what you call heroic, but it might give you guys something to do and reconnect with you, because it's been a really long time since we've talked to any of you, and answer any questions you have.
It keeps people indoors.
Well, exactly. This is what we call social distancing 101, right? We're all here with our computers. We recommend you wash your hands thoroughly after this webinar, because you don't know where we've been. I'm just going to see who's here and say a few hellos. I know Maurice is here. He's actually a friend of mine from Montreal, and we haven't seen each other for a while, but he's just up the road. It's kind of weird. There's a bunch of people here, actually. I don't know how we find out. How do we find out how many people are actually here? There looks like there'll be about 10, 20 people, maybe.
I don't know.
Let's see. 24 people are online. That's great. I really am very, very happy to see everybody.
Yeah, that's wow. I'm honored.
I guess we're not charging enough for this.
Meeting my expectation. No, I think it's great. I'm glad these people are here.
So one of the first concerns that Sean has had about this project is, what are we going to talk about? We have nothing to talk about. And I said, you must be joking. We have nothing but stuff to talk about. But before we start wittering on, I wondered if any of you have specific questions. Maybe you could write something in the chat box. Like, write any questions you have in the chat box, and we'll either start with one of those questions or we'll come to one of those questions later. Robert asks, am I paying for this? The answer is no, it's free. However, I had a brainwave after designing the idea of a webinar. I said to Sean, well, maybe if we have a donate button And if anyone wants to donate anything, like or nothing, it doesn't matter. We'll find a charity that people actually are doing good things in this pandemic, and we'll send them the money so they can do something else with it. But that's totally voluntary. There's no fee for this. And Robert's just saying he's just joking. Thanks, Robert. You made me embarrassed there for no reason. But seriously though, if you do donate anything, it could be $5, whatever. It really doesn't matter, or nothing. It's fine. If you could just post on social media about the event at the end, just tell people about it, and hopefully they'll find us, and maybe we'll spread the word that way, and whatever.
I think with the turnout, we might actually do more of these. Who knows?
What else are we going to do, really?
Right.
The office, I haven't been to the office since February, and there's no way I could get there. I can't even cross the border right now from Canada to the US. Sean's going to the office, maybe, was it twice a week at the moment, Sean?
I'm sorry, I was reading the I was reading the chat.
Don't worry about it. You just answered my question. He's not going anywhere. So if you guys enjoy this, let's do this more often, more often than once every 3 years. Maybe we could do it once every month or every 2 weeks or whatever it is, if it's popular. I'm just really happy to see people, and we have some questions coming in. How do you want to do this, Sean? Do you want to grab a question and run with it, or do you want to talk a little bit about our philosophy first?
Well, I was thinking we do questions at the end, but we could do a few questions now. I mean, the first one I saw was from Cliff. He wants to know if people are still actually purchasing comics. I know I am. For my own personal collection, I've actually kind of gone on a buying spree, which it feels like probably the worst time to be doing it, but I'm sitting around the house and I haven't bought anything in a long time. And, you start looking, and I don't know, it's like crack. Once you buy one, you want to buy another.
I'll take your word for that, mate.
Well, yes, but not beyond just myself. eBay sales seem to be pretty healthy. I'm actually surprised, and quite. Pleased. We've been.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you. Carry on.
Well, that's all right. We've been analyzing CGC prices because those are the easiest to analyze, and to be honest, that's a large percentage of our sales comes from those books. So that's what we're the most concerned about, and they're easy to analyze because you can compare them to GP prices, and I think overall they've been doing pretty well. Yeah, you know what? I just realized I don't have my earbuds in. How's the sound quality? Can everyone understand me? I mean, is it clear?
It's okay. It's not as good as it was when you had your headphones on earlier. I was going to add something about buying and selling comic books at this time. What I've noticed, as Sean was just alluding to it, I was paranoid that our sales were going to go down and down, and we should keep a close eye on prices we're getting for CGC books in particular. And they seem to be fairly normal. I mean, we don't see any record prices for stuff, at least I don't think so, but they're within like 10% of what we would normally expect. And that, to be honest, is about what you might find on a regular day anyway. Like there's a bit of variance when you're selling fairly common books like Spidey, Silver Age Spideys in Fine or something, that they're going to be fairly predictable, but you can see a 10% drop or even a 10% increase if the right two people are in the right auction. And I haven't seen anything actually that will concern me too much about that. In fact, what I've actually seen is the opposite problem for us at the moment, is that there are less people sending lists to us for us to buy. And that's really the opposite of what I predicted. I predicted less people would buy comics and more people would want to sell them because they're stuck at home. The wife and the kids are driving them nuts. Oh, I'm going to go into the garage and sort out my comic book collection. You've been hassling me to sell for 25 years. But actually, traffic to us in the form of collections for sale has dropped. But what I'm thinking now is a lot of people are spending a lot of time watching the news and literally like listening to everything that the experts have to say and what Trump has to say and his advisors have to say. In Canada, you can literally spend all day on CBC News Network and as each province announces the daily numbers and they talk about their particular, I mean, if you want to, I mean, I did that for about a week, and honestly, it's overwhelming. So I think a lot of people who might have been inclined to send us a list have probably just spent their time in front of the TV. But I think after a while, you're going to get fatigue, and I think we're going to see people start to sell collections a bit more, especially as if the lockdown continues and people need the money. I imagine they'll turn to selling collectibles to get by. But yeah, people are still buying at the moment. I actually seen some higher end books sell for very good prices, like cheap prices. So if you were looking to invest big money in a high end book, now would be an excellent time. But the average stuff that most of us buy hasn't really been affected as far as I can see.
Well, 10% on $1,000 book is $100, but 10% on a really big book can be a lot more money. So I guess
Well,
that
yeah, and I'll give you an example, 2 examples I know off the top of my head, because I was looking at them recently. The one was Captain America Comics 1 in 4.0, which was there was a copy listed for sale for $155,000, and it sat for sale for a really long time. And there's one that sold at auction last month for $100,000. Now, $100,000 is not chicken feed, but that's a significant drop. The other thing which I was looking at today was Amazing Fantasy 15 in 7.0. One sold in March for $81,000. 81 or 71? I think it was $81,000. But the most recent sales of that book have been well into 6 figures, so well into like the $120,000 range. So that's a really big drop. So now actually is a great time to be saying to yourself, the Grail book that you've always wanted to invest in, now actually with cheap money around, with the interest rate cuts and everything, it actually wouldn't be a bad time to be looking at something like that. And I think that this situation can't last forever. That's the one thing we know. It won't last forever. The stock market has been very volatile, but if you look at where stocks are now compared to where they were 3-4 weeks ago, they've bounced back quite nicely. And I think that you'll see the same for collectibles. Collectibles is a slower market. You can't just put your AR-15 into a stock program and sell it in 1 minute. It takes time to sell a big book. And I think the poor people who have maybe planned to sell their Captain America 1 or their AR-15 7.0 months ago and submit it to the auction companies and have had those results are just victims of bad timing. And in 6 months' time, they'll wish they hadn't sold, to be honest. And that's what I have to say about that. Okay, what about other questions? Are we going to do some, maybe some follow-ups here? David Williams is asking, are you suggesting there may be some panic selling? Possibly. I think if you have a choice between your family eating and you having a comic book collection, you're clearly going to choose the comic book collection. No, not really. That's what food banks are for. But seriously, I think that the people who are selling these 6-figure books are not really the kind of people who are desperate for money, I don't think. I'm just generalizing when I say that. What else has been coming over here? eBay comic listings have been about 3 million for the last year. Wow. Okay, so Robert's saying that there's a significant spike in comic book listing. Robert, do you mind telling me how you found out that information? Because that's really interesting to me. Let's see. Okay, comic market going forward. Diamond closing its door. That's a great question, Fred. What do you think, Sean? Would you like to talk about Diamond and the change? Can't hear you. I don't know what you did. Did you mute yourself? For the benefit of non-lip readers, try. This is probably why we don't do webinars very often. No, I can't hear you either. No, you are silent. Yeah, whatever. You know what? He can come back to that when he figures himself out. Rob asks, more than likely the comic book movie craze would eventually lessen or possibly end. How will that impact major keys? Minor keys and average or common books. Okay, so I think that the comic book movie craze is here to stay. And the reason I think that is because there are two reasons. One is you got Marvel / Disney, and the huge investment Disney has made into Marvel means that they are going to want to milk that cow for a very long time. Disney Plus is a really interesting platform that they are going to want to have to populate with new content, and that means new key books, because what happens with movies and TV shows is they announce it, dealers go through their book back issues looking for the keys that will be affected, and those books rocket in value, and then it calms down a bit, and then let's say it's a movie, then towards the time a movie comes out, it creeps up and up. And I just think that there's going to be, I think if you think back to, let me think, something like the late 90s, there weren't that many comic book movies, but the ones that came out were really popular. And it was almost like, guys, what's going on? You know, this is obvious that you've got a fantastic market here. Why aren't you making the most of it? And that's, Disney took another 12 years or so to buy Marvel, but when they did, it all kicked off. And I just don't see why that would end. There's certainly no limit to the amount of material that's out there. Like Marvel, if you look at the Marvel universe and the DC universe, there's a poster out there somewhere that has the Marvel heroes grouped on one side of the poster, and they take up about 3/4 of the space because there's so many of them, and the DC ones are like this little socially distanced crowd on the other side. But you think of the untapped potential in the Marvel marketplace. There's just so much they could do. So I don't think that the TV movie craze is over, and I don't think it will be for a really long time, if ever. I mean, you think about, someone mentioned Westerns in one of these questions. Think about how many Westerns there used to be years ago now, and they're not as popular anymore, but it was decades where Westerns were a huge thing, and they made loads of money for the studio, so they kept making them. I guess if they stopped making money, then that could change it. But to answer the rest of your question, I'd say that minor keys are going to be speculation material forever, because people will always be saying, what's the next TV or movie going to be? The mega keys are never going to go out of style, because I don't care who you are, whether you're interested in TV shows or movies or not, you're going to want to own an X-Men 1 or a Hulk 1 or an AF-15, FF1. You will see prices change over time, but generally speaking, those are never going to go out of style. As for average and common books, that's the one area of the hobby I don't really get. You know, like it seems to me that the fashion for buying an entire run of a series is over. I don't think people do that very much anymore. And I actually recommend against it from an investment standpoint, because it costs so much money to buy the run. And what you do tend to find with someone who has a collecting instinct is they want to own a box full of comic books. So let's say you wanted to put a run of FF together. You wouldn't buy number 1 first, which is the one you should buy first. You'd buy number 100 and then number 84, and you'd try and put the run together slowly over time, when to me that seems like the worst place to put your money, because you can always find those books, but to get the real keys is expensive, and the sooner you do it, the better, because those are going to appreciate over time, and it's going to cost you more and more. And that's why you see so many collections offered to us that are missing the big keys, because the owners couldn't afford to buy those keys. And at the time when they started collecting, if they just dug deep and bought those key issues, then they would have taken care of that, and then it would have paid them back tenfold by the time they sell to us. I think we've lost Sean. You're back. Are you able to speak?
Can you hear me
I
now?
can hear you.
Oh my gosh, Jesus! I hate technology. It has not been a good technology day.
Remind me, you have a Mac or a PC?
Let's not talk about that. I know it's with this.
It's okay. Macs aren't as good as they used to be, but yeah.
You have Mac problems sometimes.
I know.
Anyway,
I just admit it.
I did want to say one thing about the movies being delayed in respect, uh, in respect to potential values on books. Um, I think a lot of times with keys, they peak. Well, I shouldn't say they peak. People become interested in them when they announce a specific character in a movie, and then over time they peak, and then then there's a correction after the movie comes out. With the movies being delayed, that could extend the period of time where these books could grow in value or have more. It gives you a longer period of buying and selling them at a higher value than normal, since the movies are being delayed.
I'm gonna put you on the spot here. What's the next Marvel movie going to be? I can't remember now. What is it? Black Widow.
Black Widow.
Yeah.
So
That's
anyway.
Oh yeah. So Fred's saying, can we talk about the diamond shutdown now that you're back on and able to speak?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of information on it. I just know that they stopped shipping books. I heard a rumor that they didn't pay Marvel and DC for books that had already shipped to Diamond, that Diamond didn't ship to their customers. And then there was rumors about, there's speculation that Diamond may not even reopen. And then, there's going to be these other, that Diamond or that Marvel and DC were going to put their eggs in another basket. I guess what people were saying, and these are rumors, that Diamond had breached their exclusivity contract with Marvel and DC by not paying. So that gave Marvel and DC the ability to go somewhere else to distribute their books. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. I'm actually kind of skeptical, but it would be interesting. So I have been reassured by my Diamond rep that if an issue ended, or if let's say Amazing Spider-Man was on issue 15, I don't know what it's on, but let's say it was, and that book shipped, when they do start shipping again, we will receive issue 16 for that. So our customers aren't going to miss out on any issue numbers. So that's pretty much all I really know about the Diamond shutdown. I mean, Who knows when they're going to reopen? No one's certain about anything right now. Everything's closed until this whole coronavirus thing settles down. So other than that, I really have no more information. We are still placing our orders as well. Every month, we place our order. It just doesn't ship. So,
are we paying for those orders?
You could speculate that they just don't have the staff to ship. So they're probably still receiving those books, and we're going to get one big bulk shipment, when they finally do reopen. So there you go. That's all I really know.
Yeah, Nick thinks that's going to make comic book stores close down.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I mean, we're lucky. I mean, we have .com Comics in Freeport. It has, it obviously has Sell My Comic Books to support it, so it's not going to close. All it really has to do is pay its rent. We had one employee. He's collecting unemployment now. He's a good guy, Dan. It was actually his idea. He wants to do what's best for the store. And I actually still talk to him all the time. But anyway, yeah, we're not closing, but I could totally see where, a store that, lives and dies by new comic books is not going to make it. Especially if you're living, month to month and have no cash reserves. So
most comic book stores I've seen have so much inventory, and not the kind of inventory that we like, bronze, silver, golden age, copper age sometimes, but just modern new book inventory sitting around. And even at the discounts that Diamond offers, that is a ton of their cash just sitting there not selling.
Yeah, for sure.
One of our best referrers actually are comic book stores. People take their collection in thinking, oh, I'm going to sell my comic. So I go to a comic book store. Of course, why wouldn't you? And 95% of them never offer to buy them because they just can't afford to. So all their money's tied up in graphic novels and trades and new issues that haven't sold, or people order pull list. I really don't understand. I think we still do this, but only because we can afford to, because we have the other business supporting us. But we don't charge upfront fees for pull lists. I don't really understand why. I guess because no one else does, and it's just the way things have always been done. But I personally, I would want to charge upfront fees for every issue that people want to order, because it only takes them not showing up once, and you're left holding the bag of all these unpaid for new issues that is probably not going to sell to anybody.
It's true. I mean, by then they've not expired, but it's spoilage at that point. That's what we call it in the industry. When books that once it's 6 months old, it's essentially spoilage. It's really hard to sell. The only person who's really going to buy it is someone who comes in, a new collector who is looking to fill like some back issues, but that's pretty rare.
It's a tough business, and I totally agree that people are going to go out of business. But if you think about the way that our system, our entire civilization is created, the pandemic is a perfect way to weed out Darwin style, the weakest of each species. Like there's going to be news agents and grocery stores and bars and restaurants that just vanish because they were barely getting by in the beginning, and now without any customers for a while. Don't matter how much money the government says they're going to throw at companies, some of them are going to go to the wall for sure. So I think that you're going to see comic book stores go the same way, and it's just the way the world is. It's just the law of averages.
Right.
And it's sad, but that's life, I guess.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about investing, or do we want to just keep answering questions?
We can probably do both, I think. Let's ask the audience, and that's what we're here for. Do you guys want us to just answer all your questions, or do you want us to give you a sort of sense of what we think about comic book investing, speculating, collecting, and a few things that we've noticed going on, or do you want us to try and do a bit of both? We might not be able to do them both in detail, but it looks like I think people want us to have a go at both. Yeah, okay. It looks like we want to try and do both. So let's do the overview, Sean. I'm going to need to get myself a glass of water before I fall over.
All right.
So what did we talk about? We talked about our philosophy.
Well, first, I guess we should probably have our, state a little bit of a disclaimer here as far as comic book investing goes. If you're here for, if your expectations are, of us giving you the next great or the next best comic book investment, then we have good news and bad news. First, the bad news is we aren't going to be able to do that. We don't have a crystal ball. We really can't predict the next great comic book investment. It's just not possible. But the good news is we can give you some fundamentals and principles that will help you, maybe reduce the risk or make a better choice, for in buying a book that's gonna, grow in value over time.
So when we talk about fundamentals, what do we mean by that? What's our real principle of, because we have comic book investments. We're in a slightly unfair position in a sense because we don't pay retail for books, but
Right.
that doesn't really make any difference because if you think about it, we keep some books, so there's a reason we keep books, whether we pay 20% of retail or 80% of retail or 100% of retail in some cases. There's a reason we think that certain books are going to appreciate over time, and we have what we call the vault, which is where we put books that we think we want to keep owning for a significant amount of time, potentially until we retire. And Sean, what do those books look like? And I'm not talking about specific books now. What's the common thread with those books?
I'd say books that we look for are books that are high demand, high demand, low supply. Like books that, there's not a ton of them out there, but everyone wants one. I mean, those are the best books to invest in. Because let's face it, the comic book market is a simple supply and demand. It's really demand driven. I mean, demand is really what drives values of books. I mean, it's the perfect example is like New Mutants 98. I mean, that by no means is a scarce book, but there's so much demand for it. It's still, 98s are worth what, like $700?
800.
Oh, 800? Oh, it's actually gone up a little bit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, those are the types of books that I think we're looking to invest in. I mean, we don't have New Mutants 98s in our vault because you could literally log on to eBay and you can buy one in almost any grade at any time.
It's a horrible investment, I think. It's a horrible investment in a holder. But it's the kind of book that does show up uncertified in people's random collections in the wild. So if you're looking to buy collections on Craigslist and places like that, it's very common. So it shows up in a lot of those 80s, 90s collections. And you might be able to pick up 1,000 books, and 5 of those books will pay for the entire collection once you've slabbed them. I'm going to circle back a second. Charles Gentry is asking, are there any good books on videos that teach investing in comics? Actually, Charles, I asked that question to myself years ago, and there's a comic book investment book that I found on Amazon that was published in 1988, and it's really fascinating to see the prices back then. You could buy a Detective 27 for about 80 grand or something. A lot of time machine. But no, there aren't actually, as far as I can tell, there aren't actually any courses or books that just try and take a sort of bird's eye view of comic book investing. But we actually offer some digital courses and resources that will help you. But I'll come to that later, and I don't want this to turn into a sales pitch. It's really not meant to be about that. But no, I wouldn't buy a New Mutants 98 in a holder and expect it to appreciate in value, because I think they're still selling for about what they were selling 5 years ago, and 2 movies have come and gone since then. So I think it'll probably be an $800 book in 98 for the next 10 years maybe, but I don't think it's ever going to go up beyond that because there's just so much supply. So yes, demand drives prices, but supply feeds the market, and if there's so much supply, then you get very stable results, which is great for us because we get them quite often. But if you're trying to invest it, I wouldn't put my money in a New Mutants 98 thinking, oh, I'm going to make double my money in 10 years. It's just not going to happen.
It can be a great book to flip.
Yes, I mean, if you pay the right price for it and it's not certified when you buy it, you press it, you grade it, you get a 9.8 or 9.6 or a 9.4 or a 9.2 or an 8.5, or you can sell that book in almost any grade.
Right. I mean, it's just like anything. You just got to pay the right price for it.
Yeah, I think that's our number one tip is don't overpay for something if you want to make a profit. I mean, that seems like a really obvious thing to say, But when I started out, before I even knew who Sean was, I was buying collections from dealers and paying just way too much money for them and not knowing what I was doing. And I just got excited. And my first year of buying and selling comic books for profit, I lost $30,000. But the good news from that story is that I learned my lesson. The worst thing in the world is to make mistakes and not learn from them. And so I learned from this, and actually I got on Sean's radar because the stuff I was sending to him when he was working at Comic Link got better and better. And he actually called me one day and said, "Where are you getting all this stuff from?" And I said, "Well, I just, I started building a website because I got tired of being a sugar daddy for dealers." And eventually the website got traction, and that's why you're all here, because you found us by searching for us on Google. Let's see. Wow, there's a bunch of questions coming in here. Did we really cover this topic? I'm trying to think. I would say don't buy something thinking you're going to sell it again instantly unless it's something you can flip quickly, like a New Mutants 98. I think you'll have a harder time making a profit if you expect to turn over Silver Age keys. Those are the sort of things you have to hold. So I think you have to be realistic. If you want to make yourself a retirement fund, don't buy the kind of books you need to turn over quickly, and vice versa. If you just want to make a bit of extra cash, don't buy the retirement fund books like an X-Men 1, because they take time to appreciate. And the last thing you want to do if you've put a $3,000 book on your credit card is hold that debt for 3 years while you wait for the book to appreciate. See the difference?
Right. Yeah, I think basically don't spend money you can't afford to lose. I mean, and when you buy a book, think about why you're buying it. Are you buying it as an investment? Are you buying it just because you want to collect? I mean, I know Ashley wouldn't. I mean, and I agree with him that you shouldn't buy a run of Spider-Man as an investment. But if you want to collect a run of Spider-Man, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But you have to be honest with yourself. Don't think, oh, I'm gonna collect this run of Amazing Spider-Man and it's gonna be worth. I'm gonna sell it for a huge profit. I mean, I don't know if that's realistic. But if you want to collect a run of Spider-Man, that's completely honorable. I don't think every book I buy for my collection is going to be worth a ton of money in the future. I just buy them because I like them. Then there's flipping. So that is obviously short term. I think Ashley was alluding to that with the X-Men 1. X-Men 1 is not a book that you can flip unless you have the ability
to steal it. Yeah.
you have the ability to get it at a really good price. I think dealers sometimes try to do this. They'll buy books at auction and then they try to flip them by marking it up 20-30% where it's beyond the market, the current market price, and then eventually it catches up and then they sell it. Now, really, did they make any money there? I don't know. I mean, they could have turned that money over 3 or 4 times if they would have spent it, better. So yeah, the great books for flipping are, like modern keys, stuff that's being driven by the MCU. You can go on I mean, I made so much money just browsing books on eBay, looking for books that were really nice that I thought I could press, put in a holder, and then sell for a profit. I had a spreadsheet that I literally would put in the amount of money that I was going to pay, the max. In fact, I set up my sniping software and say, I'm going to pay X dollars for this, and I'm not going to go over that. How much shipping, certification, how much it would be worth at an estimated grade. And sometimes, a lot of times I would make $100, $200 on a book. When I lost money, I would only lose $10. So my wins were always bigger than my losses. So in aggregate, I made a lot of money. So, flipping is short term, where investing is long term. Speculating, I guess, that's kind of a whole nother. That's like flipping's little brother. That's trying to. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe you can describe speculating. This is one of your things.
So it's like a subset of flipping. So you'll find plenty of Facebook groups online where all they do is talk about which comic book issues you should buy lots of because of something in the detail of the story. I'm trying to think now. There's a Star Wars
movies.
There was a Star Wars character. I'm not very up on Star Wars, but Doctor something. Probably all of you know who I'm talking about. I just can't think of it. And this group I happened to be in just because I thought it would be interesting. Afra, thank you, Dr. Afra. That's it. I was thinking Spectre. That doesn't sound right. Dr. Afra. So that this group I was in were tipping this to be a big thing, and lo and behold, it became a big thing, and they made loads of money. But what you don't hear about is all the other books they tip that don't go anywhere, and they pump a couple of $100 into new issues in the hope that something's going to happen, and it doesn't happen. And it's like anybody, I could tell you about the stock market killings I've made in the last couple of weeks, but I won't tell you about the ones that went wrong. And I think you have bias for success, right? You look at things and you say, okay, I really want this. I want to believe, man. I want to believe that speculating in comic books is going to make me a ton of money. So you focus on the Dr. Afras and you overlook the, I don't know, Gambit's cousin or whatever it is that people have tried to speculate and that hasn't worked.
Gambit's cousin, is that a thing?
I don't know. I just invented it. It is now. But the point I'm trying to make is that you have to be super disciplined. If you heard what Sean was just saying about having a spreadsheet, sniping software, setting a limit for each book and not exceeding that, and knowing that he could sell a so-called dud if it came back a 9.6 instead of a 9.8 and still make a bit of money or not lose too much money. So I'd say that the speculating thing is the same. You have to be super disciplined and keep proper records. Like the whole point of investment is to get a return on your investment. So the same thing's true of speculation. If you aren't keeping records, but you are just randomly throwing money around it or the next hot topic, in a year's time, you'll be where I was, which is, oh, I think I'll do my accounts. Oh, I lost 30 grand. That wasn't good. So I think you need to have a very clear sense, set limits for yourself. Don't put stupid investments or speculations on credit cards and carry that debt for years. Just be smart about it. And yeah, if you only buy 5 copies of something and it goes crazy, you'll wish you bought 50, but that's just human nature. And I think if you're disciplined, you can make money like that. I think I prefer Sean's method of learning how to grade comic books from the screen. So looking for 9.8.
That is key. If you can't do that, it's a lost cause.
So much so that when Sean told me what he was doing, I said, well, can you teach me how to grade from the screen? And he said, well, I could try. So then we created a course, which if you scroll down, you can probably find a button that says comic book grading video course. And that's what we did. We created a video course, and some of you may have already taken that course. And the idea is that it shows real life eBay listings from years ago now. And I'm describing why I think it's a 9.8 or a 6.0 or a 2.0, whatever. And that should teach you how to do it. If you take the video course and you study it and you practice, you can actually get quite good at grading books from the screen. That's what John did all day long. Actually, all night long, wasn't it? It was like you'd work all day and then come home and do that all evening.
That's what you do all day.
Well, it's what I do now. Yes, exactly. When I'm buying collections for the company, I grade from people's scans or cell phone pictures or whatever. So that skill has been critical to the success of the business.
Yeah.
So I would say if you're thinking about buying stuff to sell on eBay, you need to learn how to grade from images and what to look for in images, because it's very different. If you're holding a book in your hand, you can turn it into the light, and you can see dents and things that aren't visible in pictures. And sometimes after you look at enough of them, you can get a sense that there's something wrong with this book. Oh yeah, the light at the top of that picture doesn't look right. But that takes time and practice, and so if that's going to be your principle is to buy books on eBay, slab them, and sell them for a profit, you've got to get really, really good at grading from pictures. So that's something you need to think about.
Yeah, I just want to go over, I just want to reiterate a few of those points. So I have some notes here. So the keys to flipping is obviously buy low and sell high. Grading is imperative. You have to be able to grade, and not just in person. You have to be able to grade from a scan. I would actually look for sellers. I would never buy from dealers. I'd look for low feedback sellers. That's another key. Buy from low feedback sellers on eBay. You have to have a GP analysis account.
Hang on, I'm going to stop here. Why low feedback sellers?
Low
Because
feedback.
that seems counterintuitive to me. Like I don't want to buy comic books from a guy who only has 5 feedback. Why would you do that?
Because they tend to sell at auction. They don't necessarily grade the book, and I think other buyers are just cautious to buy from them. And you can find some real gems if you know how to grade a book from a scan. It doesn't matter if they have, 20 feedback. It's probably their personal collection, and they're just selling it for the first time. It's hitting the market for the first time, and they could be really nice. And you can determine that from the scan. They don't have to be a dealer. I'll be honest, most dealers on eBay tend to overgrade a bit, because it's their livelihood. They need they're trying to maximize the amount of money they make on that book. Where I think a collector who's had these books since, he bought them for 35 cents or whatever each, is willing to sell them for whatever they sell for. He has very little into them. So he's going to let the market determine their value. They're not going to grade them, and you can just determine the grade from the scan. So, and honestly, I don't think dealers are big fans of the auction format. Most dealers are selling in the buy it now, and you can't make money on those books. I mean, auction is the way to go. You have to buy at auction. So
Can I ask you a follow-up question? Have you ever approached somebody who's selling books raw on eBay and asked them to buy the rest of their collection?
Oh yeah. Remember, what was that Spidey collection, or that Spidey? Was it like? It was a black cover, Bronze Age.
SM-194.
No, not a. It wasn't a key. The one I said I destroyed the market on.
All right.
I don't remember what issue it was. It was like 188 or something. Whatever. It was a black one. But anyway, the guy he kept posting a bunch, and they were really nice. And I'm like, how about you just sell them all to me directly? And he did. And we got a ton of 9/8s. 188, or maybe it's not 188. I don't know. I don't remember what issue number it is, Rob. I'm probably wrong. It was like a 35-cent issue. Maybe it was a Jigsaw issue. It was black, all black, and it used to be really valuable in 9/8 because there wasn't many of them.
You killed it.
And then I probably certified like 10 or 15 of them, and that was pretty much it. But anyway, so there's that. GP analysis, obviously, you have to have a GP analysis account, and you have to use Excel. I mean, you got to know, like I said, you have to know, if you do the math, it does all the math for you, and then it gives you potential profit. And that's what you're looking at. So if you see a book on eBay and you think it could be a 9.4, you're gonna look up on GP analysis and you're gonna see what 9.4s are selling for. You're gonna put that value in there, and then you're gonna subtract all the costs associated with getting that book, buying it, certifying it from its value, and it's going to tell you if you made any money. So the key is to pay as little as possible, and that's where the sniping software comes in. You determine what amount you need to pay to make a decent profit, and you set your sniping software at that, and that's it. You don't get attached to it emotionally. I mean, trust me, I've done plenty of bidding on eBay where it's a book from my collection where I say I'm going to bid this amount, and then I bid again, and I bid again, and I keep bidding, and next thing I probably overpay. When it's for my own collection, I really don't care that much, but you can't get attached emotionally like that. That's why sniping software is so great. Pressing, obviously, you have to be able to press.
I'm going to stop you for a second. Did you say you had a spreadsheet that did this for you?
Yeah.
Could we send a copy of that spreadsheet to everybody?
Sure. Yeah. I don't know how we do that.
Well,
you mean like right now?
Well, no, not this minute, but I'm saying after the webinar's over, maybe we just contact everyone and just send them a copy of the.
It's not complicated.
No, I'm sure, but if you asked me to do that in Excel, I would have no clue what to do. So
okay.
I'm sure other people here probably would feel the same way. Like if you've already done the work, why would you want to duplicate that work?
Oh, Fred's asking what sniping software I use. I use my iBidder.
iBidder.
Google
Kane Davis.
Good idea.
Yeah, there you go.
And then the power of the CGC holder. So if you a lot of books, what was the X-Men 221? Is that the
Mr. Sinister?
First Miss, that book, it was a dime a dozen in high grade on eBay. But as soon as you put that sucker in a holder, it became valuable. It was just the power of the CGC holder. I certified so many of those books. I mean, I wasn't making a ton of money, but I was, you start adding it up, $20, $30, $40, $50 a pop. And I was buying, not just that book. I was probably buying hundreds of books a month. It adds up over time. It's a lot of work. But yeah, the power of the CGC holder. I mean, you can, especially with Bronze Age books. That was the sweet spot. Like those, like 30, or let's say 25 cents to 35-cent range Marvels. Those are the books I would buy. Those are the best because you can find those in high grade and you put them in a holder and they're instantly worth money. So that's my my little flipping spiel.
I'm just going to head back on something that you said earlier about collecting, like say a run of Spider-Man. I would certainly not recommend you buy graded books if you want to put a run together. Not because you can't read them, because I mean, I'm looking here right at a stack of Marvel Masterworks. So if I want to read The Amazing Spider-Man, I'm not going to read the originals. That would just be stupid. But think of the money you're tying up in pieces of plastic to put into boxes. Even if it's, I don't know, what do we pay, Sean, for a value tier? Is it $20? $25 for a value tier submission. That would be something like, what, if I'm going to put together a run of Spidey from 1 to 100, I'm tying up $3,000 or more in plastic cases. What's the point of that? If you're buying for investment and you're worried about something being restored, then you'd want to buy a certified book. But otherwise, if you're just putting a run together, why would you do that? Why would you give CGC that money? I'd just
unless you really wanted to collect like 9.6 or 9.8. I mean, I don't think there's a problem with that. I mean, look, it's collecting. You just have to realize there's a cost to that, right? I mean, we're not talking about investing. You have no expectations on necessarily making a ton of money in the future. I don't think I would buy them. I think a nice 8.0 is like the sweet spot for collecting Silver Age Marvels. I mean, they feel really good in your hands. There's not a big difference between like an 8.0 and a 9.2, as far as condition goes. But, we can agree to disagree, but I still think that, like if you're collecting, I don't think you should really worry about like whether you're going to make money or not. It's just you're doing it for your personal satisfaction, for nostalgia or whatever.
Right. Okay, so we're still on the topic of certified books. Kane, yes, I did see your question about the UK and US markets. I'll get to that soon. Rob was talking about the other grading companies. So I think that's an interesting topic. Halo is the Australian equivalent of CGC. And then you've got CBCS.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait a minute,
And
I've never heard of them.
yeah, no, there's a good reason for that, because Australia is a long way away. And no one knows what they are, so I don't think people really sell them in North America very often. And the other two are CBCS and PGX. I think we should talk about PGX first because it's the easiest. PGX, just avoid PGX books. They are notorious for missing restoration, whether by accident or on purpose, depending on who you talk to. Yeah. There are certain PGX books that, not all of them, but I believe at a certain point in their evolution from the idea of doing PGX to actually slabbing books, there was an era where the case is flexible and you can actually warp it, remove the book that was in there and put another book in and close it again, and no one can tell. There are stories of alleged mishandling of people's books. So for example, someone sent in a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1 first print, and when they got it back, it wasn't the first print when they examined it. Just that's an allegation. I can't speak with whether that's true or not. I would just say avoid PGX books altogether, not because of any of those reasons, just because they don't sell for as much. So it's really hard to predict what a PGX book is going to sell for. GP Analysis do not report sales of PGX books. Just avoid them. There are enough CGC books out there. You can find the same book in the same grade and be a lot more confident with CGC. As for CBCS, collectors seem to love CBCS. They love the guy that started it. I can't remember his name, but he's got a stellar reputation. Sorry?
Steve Borak.
Steve Borak. He has a stellar reputation.
He used to be the president of CGC, and then he went to Harris.
Exactly. Yeah, he was back at CGC in the early days, and you know what? I'm sure he's an amazing guy and he's doing an amazing job. But the reality on the ground is that CBCS books sell for less than CGC books in the same grade. So just from a dealer's perspective, I don't slab books at CBCS. What's the point? It's not like they're half the price of CGC and then you make up the difference with the 10%. No, there's really no material advantage to sending CBCS a book. I think the only way I would ever use them would be to certify something that has a signature that wasn't verified, and it would have to be a really big signature because they charge quite a lot of money for that service, and it has to be a big book with a really big signature like a Jack Kirby or something. And I don't even know if it's even worth it. I don't know if the expense is really justified at the end of the day, because I don't think collectors and the general market really are familiar enough with CBCS books. There just aren't that many of them out there compared to CGC. And so when they come up for sale, people aren't familiar with them and they sell for less. And I think that would also be true of Halo. I think Halo would struggle to sell in North America because no one knows anything about Halo. Sean's never even heard of them. He's a comic book dealer in North America.
This is the first time I've actually learned something today.
Well, I've heard of them because I get offered Halo books once in a while, but it's really hard to. Oh yeah, but it's really hard to price them, and they're usually modern books. And if you know a New Mutants 98.85 is in Australia, there is no point in them shipping that to us.
Oh yeah.
What's the point? First of all, I can't even tell what it's going to sell for. Secondly, the shipping is going to kill it. It's just so we don't handle them.
Right. You know, the one thing I can say about CBCS books, there is a time where I think that they can do as well as CGC, and that's in high demand, rare Golden Age books. I think if you put something like that in a CBCS holder, I don't think collectors are gonna. I mean, if you can't get one and it's in a CBCS holder, you're going to pay CGC prices. I mean, I would. What are you going to do? Say, well, I'm not going to buy that because I'm going to wait for a CGC one to come around. I don't think that's, I don't think that's how people think, That's not how I would think. I mean, I just bought a CBCS book, and honestly, if I was, if I was looking to buy, let's say, an ASM one, and it was in a CBCS holder, I probably wouldn't have bought it. But it was a rare Golden Age book that, in the past, it's taken me years to find one. So I'm gonna buy it, and I'm gonna pay a premium.
Right. And Kane's just asking about the Eurograder company. Again, Kane, I've never even heard of them. So at least I'd heard of Halo, but same principle applies. If less people are familiar with a company that certifies things, then the prices you get for them when you sell them, it's going to be unpredictable. Sean and I could start slamming books. Sell my comic books grading company. Like who's going to know what they are, who we are, trust that, the fact that are we trustworthy? Let's look on eBay. How many are there? Oh, none. So it's the same problem. I think Eurograder are probably gonna have a local market the way that Halo has a local market. But I believe now CGC has a London office.
Yeah, I think they
so.
do too.
Yeah, they've got a footprint now in Europe, which is a really smart idea because up till then it was a lot of back and forth with customs and everything, which is a pain. So they've predicted that there's enough demand from Europe to create a Europe office, and so they fill that demand. So I think that Eurograder, whoever they are, have got their work cut out for them.
Well, I think behind the US and Canada, UK is probably the third biggest comic book market in the world.
Mm-hmm. Which is a nice segue to Kane's question about the UK and US prices, which is really cool.
Yeah, this one's definitely all of you. You actually enjoy these books.
Yeah, because I grew up in the UK, as some of you may have noticed, and I
really.
Yeah, no, actually, I'm Stewie from Family Guy. I just put the voices on. I collect Marvel. Mostly Silver Age price variants from the UK, just because we buy so much Silver Age that they stand out. They look different. They actually were distributed at different times, so they removed the month slug from the front cover, which is interesting. The UK old pennies and shillings prices look weird on the cover, so it's kind of weird. And I just like them because they're different. They're actually kind of scarce. You would probably see, if we lived in Europe, that would be different. We'd see them much more often. We do see them fairly often from UK-based sellers. But even so, like a typical UK collection of Silver Age has about 50% UK price variance and 50% US cover prices. So even in the UK, then it's not 100% of the market. And they are genuinely rare in high grade.
Oh,
I think we see them. They're beaters. They're always beaters. They come in a thrashed collection. There's some interesting stories of how we got some of our comic books over the years. Like we bought a Hulk one from the UK that was actually a US version because the owner's aunt used to work on cruise ships, and she'd pick up comic books in New York and bring them over for him and stuff. And it works both ways. You have people who have emigrated to the States, so their collections turn up and they have some UK price variance in, but they're usually VG or less, So there are some websites out there that do a very good job of cataloging all the known UK price variants. So I would do a bit of Googling. But as for prices, it depends. Like key issues can actually be worth a little bit more than the US variants because they're just so hard to find. But typically they go for a bit less. Like most UK price books go for about 10 to 20% less than the US equivalent.
I think that just reinforces this supply and demand aspects of the hobby. The supply is way lower, but yet the demand is way lower, so the prices reflect it. They're not worth as much as the US equivalent, which
it brings things like 30 and 35 cent price variance for Marvel, newsstand variants, the so-called newsstand variants that people are collecting now, and Canadian price variants, which all those topics could be an entire webinar on their own, but they're worth mentioning here because we're talking about this kind of topic. And CGC are finally noting on labels whether something's Canadian price variant. They don't. I don't think.
Do they do that?
Yeah, they do for some books, not all of them.
See, they should do all books. I mean, don't get me started. I could. It's a missed opportunity by CGC. I mean, what it was probably like 6 years ago. They reduced the year that of what was considered a modern. So they went from 1980 to 1975. So it's 1975 and forward was then considered a modern. And what they were trying to do is trying to broaden the scope of books that were actually worth certifying, right? Because if you consider just from 1980 forward, you're losing a huge chunk of books from 1975 to 1979 that maybe aren't good enough to go value tier because they're just not value, but sending them modern makes sense. So they made the right decision. They went to 1975 and 1980. They're making the same sort of mistake here with Canadian price variance and the what are the ones with barcodes? Newsstand variants. Those they should note that on the label all the time, and then let the market determine which ones are valuable. We might be surprised, and what that would do is just increase the volume of books that what people would want to submit to CGC because they would want that notification. They want that noted on the label. It would then be worth certifying. Right now, there's just speculation. So
yeah, and I think, as you've pointed out in the past, anything that CGC can do to create more demand for their services is worth pursuing.
Exactly.
Just give more reasons for people to slab books. I mean, that's what I would do in their position.
Absolutely.
Rob is asking, do you think US buyers will ever value Pence copies the same as a US book? I never say never, Rob. I just think that
I do. I say never all the time.
You always say never, and like there'll never be a pandemic.
I didn't say that.
No, but you might have done. But yeah, I don't know. The answer is we don't know specifically what anyone will ever value. But I think that people might one day wake up and realize that if you want a Hulk 1 UK edition, it's something like 50 times rarer than the US equivalent. And it's already a rare book, relatively speaking. I mean, it's not rare exactly, but it doesn't turn up very often. I mean, we could go on about the big keys, Marvel keys, and how often they show up. And I think Hulk 1 is probably the scarcest of them all. I think we may even get AF-15s offered to us more often than Hulk 1. It's just a difficult book.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
And the UK version of it is I think I've only ever owned one, and that was for about 24 hours. It's a sad story.
That might be a good buying opportunity. I mean, I love finding untapped markets, sub markets, I should say, in the comic book hobby. Way back, I started collecting flamethrower covers, and I could get all these really cool books relatively cheap. And of course, I sold them all to like start this company. You may have heard of it, Sell My Comic Books. But recently, I've kind of like got this urge to find those books again and buy them again, and I'm like, holy shit, they're so expensive now. So that was kind of an untapped sub-market. So who knows? Maybe the same thing is with UK price variance. I mean, if enough people start buying them, that's all it takes, right? So demand goes up. If demand goes up, prices go up. It's that simple.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that there hasn't been a book written about them, because they're just a little bit more interesting. You know, if you collect Silver Age books and you're bored, then what's the next thing you're going to pivot into? I think that might be it. I mean, I don't think really serious Silver Age collectors get involved in Bronze Age books or Golden Age. But I think people have a niche and they tend to stick to it. Although if you saw my personal comic book collection, you wouldn't know what the hell I've been smoking, because I have so many different things in there. It's just there's just no rhyme or reason. I'm a classic example of what not to do. You know, I talk a good game, but actually when I buy stuff, I tend to buy stuff that I like in the moment, and then afterwards I wonder what the heck was I thinking. I mean, it doesn't mean there's anything bad in there. It's just I'm a bit impulsive. So don't do what I do. Do what I say. That's what my number one piece of advice.
Well, you have to tell us what you do. I mean, what are you buying?
Well,
you're like, oh man, why did I buy that?
I do buy books from collections that come into the office that I've always wanted to own, or I think, you know, like for a reason, you know, at the moment seems like a good idea. For example, I've got a Brave and the Bold 28 that we bought here in Canada. Actually, it looked like a 9/8 from the front, but it has these horrible stains on the back. It looks like it got left on top of an oil puddle or something, and the stains go into the books. There's nothing that can be done about it. But from the front, it's the nicest Brave and the Bold 28 you'll ever see. It's gorgeous.
I thought it had a big tear in it.
Hmm?
I thought it had a big tear.
No, that was the one I actually sold.
Oh, okay.
It's got the same grade somehow. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I was robbed. There should be at least a 6.0. It's just so nice. There's that, and then I mean that's just a victim of me being hopeful about DC, and they're just useless at putting movies out. And the Brave and the Bold movie wasn't, Justice League movie wasn't that all that. So there's that one. I've got a What If 105, which is the first Spider Girl, which I still think has a chance of being worth something one day, but I don't know why I bought it. What else have I got? I've got some Golden Age horror, which I like.
You can't go Golden Age horror.
You can't, but I should just stick to one thing, you know. Like if I'm going to buy, I've got a Hulk one. But if I'm going to buy something, I should just stick to that, and that's why I look at my box of stuff, of goodies, and they're like, there's a bit of Spidey, there's a bit of this, a bit of that, and it just doesn't seem like I'm reading my own newsletters. I should just read my own newsletters and follow the advice in those, rather than just like I'll sit in front of an auction and I miss the book I wanted, and then I go, well, what else can I buy? You know, that's the worst behavior you can have. So if you want to learn from me today, that's the number one lesson. Do not do what I do. Don't get sucked in and start bidding on stuff that you don't really know you want, because chances are you don't. Although I do have some, Maurice has been here to my place. He's seen a few of my pieces of art. I've got some nice original art that I will always like. I'm a bit of a Batman fan. I don't know. We'll do another webinar, and I'll pull the box out and I'll show them on the screen. But I can't remember off the top of my head.
That would be a fun webinar to like just show off our collection.
Yeah, if you like Archie.
Would people really like that? If you like, I have some non-Archie. Well, okay, not really.
Yeah, many.
I guess yeah, if you like Archie.
Robert's asking, when are we going to do our unboxing videos? When are we going to do that?
Okay, look, that's me. I actually have a spot now all set up. We finally got our office. I mean, our first office was, we basically were busting at the seams. It got to the point where we didn't have space to do them. And to be honest, I feel like we kind of lost interest. We were having a difficulty monetizing it. It was taking a lot of my time and my staff's time to do these videos. And I don't know if we were really getting anything from it, but I don't know. I think I have a different philosophy now. I think we're going to do them again. Obviously, can't do them now. We're going to have to wait a bit.
It's the perfect time. It's a pandemic. Let's do some unboxing videos. What else are we going to do?
I guess I could bring them into the house and do them. I could bring the packages here and have my daughter videotape it.
You know what? I think you can also get a tripod. But you could also like unbox the stuff before you do the unboxing video, so you don't have to like do 5 minutes of you cutting tape and stuff, which
But I think people like that part
I don't know if they actually
because we
do.
would just like we wouldn't. It wasn't just silence. I mean, we're probably wasting valuable time here, but it wasn't just silence of me like opening a box. There would be like Sean and Scott would be there, and I would be, and we'd be like yapping and just cracking jokes and having a good time while I'm getting into the box. So
And the orange knife, the orange knife became a star too, a YouTube sensation.
the orange knife, yes, I still have the orange knife. So
Nick, if you look underneath the webinar, there's a link to our course on pressing comics. Is it difficult? It's difficult if you have no idea what you're doing and you're in a shed on your own and you have a stack of Bronze Age Spider-Mans that were sprayed with water in the 1970s and you learn from scratch using a t-shirt press, then yes, it's very difficult. But we've gone through that process, so you don't have to. And I think it's a 3-hour video course, and it will teach you everything you need to know, including what kind of press to buy, what kind of silicone paper to put in between the covers and the presses, how to hydrate books, how to clean books with dry erase pads, and you can learn how to do it. It's not that hard, and all the mistakes you will typically make on your own, you can avoid by watching all our videos. So that's as salesy as this is going to get, because I did not want to be selling. Pressing equipment costs. I think you can buy one of those Seal 150s for about $300-$400. No?
You know what? Supply and demand, they've gotten more expensive.
Oh.
They're harder to, I mean, really, they're much harder to come by. I mean, I haven't priced one in a while, but I occasionally I'll look and I'm like, wow, they've gotten more expensive. But you know what? It's worth it. Even if you spend $400 on a press, if you can make that money back so fast. I mean, it's about grading and pressing and CGC. You do those three things. If you can do those three things, and you buy right. We're talking about flipping again, but yeah, it's worth it.
Yeah, I would say go to a yard sale. When you got your press, go to a yard sale, order the silicone release paper, go to a yard sale, buy some junky books, and just practice with those until you get the hang of it. But there's no magic secret sauce that prevents anyone from pressing books. I mean, you can mess it up, but not too badly. There aren't too many things you can do to destroy a book. You could have the heat cranked way up. You could accidentally press a crease into a book by not lining up the paper or missing something that then you press more permanently. But it's really, once you've done it 10 times, you've got the hang of it. I know Maurice is on this webinar, and he presses a lot of books, and I think he's watched the course. And I don't know, Maurice, if you can chat here, but I think you learned how to press from our course, I think, maybe, Maurice. Yeah, thanks. On pressing, can you use an old-fashioned book press that doesn't use heat? No, you cannot. Well, you could, but we don't recommend that.
It won't do anything.
It won't really do anything. But the heat is what really gets rid of what you can, and you can't press everything out either, of course.
And heat and moisture, really.
Yeah, heat and moisture, but you can't press everything out. A hard crease that breaks color will get less, but it won't disappear. But what's really good for pressing is when you have a book that, let's say you've bought a collection and they were stacked, and you get a stacking bend. The spines are thicker than the rest of the book, so they bend up like this in the boxes, whatever. And you get that, and it looks like a 9/8 except for the stacking bend. You put that in a press, it comes out, it is like new. Other things that it can get rid of, minor bends, like, so when someone's opening the book, sometimes their thumb just gently like bumps against the corner of the cover, and it doesn't break color or fiber, because there's a fiber breaking crease thing as well, which talk about in the course. But you can see them, like sometimes you'll get a secondhand book and you see it's like it's not perfectly flat, or maybe it's been exposed to a tiny bit of moisture and it's not water damage, it's just a little bit wavy. Pressing gets rid of that. I mean, it looks so much nicer too. Even a Silver Age book in VG that's kind of thrashed, you press it, if you're going to keep it, it's not even to sell, you just want to keep it for yourself. handling that after it's been pressed, it's night and day.
Oh,
And
you can. I haven't pressed all my books that are in my collection, but I plan all the raw books I have. I will eventually get around to pressing them, just because they're.
spine roll. Spine roll is amazing. Like you can get a book that's literally splayed, so all the pages are kind of like squashed out of alignment, and so you press it flat open once to get it completely flat, and then you refold it and press it again, and it looks like it's so much better.
You got to be careful. You can really mess up a book though. I mean that's a pretty advanced. That's a more advanced technique.
Okay, I mean, I'm just saying it's possible.
That's not where you want to start.
I'm not saying we want to start that way. I certainly wouldn't do it with like a Detective 27. You probably want to leave that to somebody else. But you know, there are a bunch of skills you can learn for pressing that, and it's not that hard. It's really not that hard. Most of it's not that hard. There are a few more advanced things, as Sean just pointed out. I should probably dial back your expectations a little bit. I'm
going back, and Charles Gentry was asking about best value on a press, and should cleaning be done by a professional only? Absolutely not. Cleaning that's like the easiest. That's easier than pressing. I mean, cleaning is basically you buy these. It's like it's a bag filled with little bits of eraser that if you take it and you like squeeze it and massage the bag, it releases the bits onto the book, and then you just take that bag and then you just clean the white parts of the book. And you don't have to rub real hard back and forth. You want to be
the back cover, not the front cover.
Well, the front cover can have white. I mean, X-Men 1 has
white.
Mostly
it's the back cover, though, right?
Mostly back covers, but I clean the front of X-Men 1. But anyway, but you got to be careful with the corners. You don't want to like catch that corner and go forward. You can crinkle that corner pretty bad. You want to or tear it. You want to like work kind of away from the towards the corner off the book. But anyway, no, cleaning, you want to practice on cheap books that you don't care about. But cleaning totally is not a job that should be left to professionals only. It's way easier than pressing. You just have to get the bag. It's a cleaning pad. You can buy them at art supply stores. Amazon has them. And then you need I use a piece of cardboard that I put the book on. And then you can use like a clean, dry paintbrush to brush the crumbs off. And that's pretty much it. I mean, you just clean it and then you brush all the crumbs off. You do have to clean. I clean inside the front cover and inside the back cover because sometimes the crumbs can get up. So books have overhang. That's where the cover overhangs the interior pages. And the crumbs can get up under. How am I doing this? They can get up under the cover and inside the book, and you want to make sure those all are gone.
So I'm going to correct you because you said you clean in there. You don't clean inside. You brush. You brush it.
Brush, yes. You don't clean inside the book. You brush the crumbs out because they do get in there. Just
Noel,
inside the back cover.
Noel's asking for an example. I mean, I don't happen to have a cleaning pad with me or a book that needs cleaning, but there's a video showing how to do it in the course. I think the course is like $50.
I think it's called Westcott makes them. Here, I can.
Yeah, but I think he wants like to see us cleaning a book. Maybe we could do that. I don't know. That's not going to be possible today, but maybe we can arrange that sometime. I don't know. It's not hard. There's a video of Sean cleaning a book in the course. It's well worth checking it out. Rob, come on. What about using the old hand iron? There are things called tacking irons. Actually, it's like baby irons, like little irons. And Sean uses that sometimes for sometimes when Marvel chipping is on the edge of a book, and you get little flakes that are sort of like peeled up. Sometimes Sean uses a tacking iron to put those back into place before he presses it. But he still presses the book. I don't think you can use a hand iron to press a book. You could try. I'd love to see the results, guys.
Tacking irons are invaluable, especially when you have a real. I mean, what did I just had a Brave and
Phantom Lady.
That Phantom Lady, yeah, okay, yeah. It was really, I mean, it was all like this had bad spine roll and really like just little pieces of the spine and of corners like were all just like folded over and hard crease. Like they've been like that for probably 30, 40 years, you know? So a tacking iron is really great for getting all those pieces of paper somewhat flat, at least flat enough to where you can get it into the press and get the press closed and they're not going to like fold back over on themselves. You know, in fact, I was doing a Brave and the Bold 28 that had a detached centerfold, and the centerfold had like on the so a lot of times when the centerfold is detached, it sticks out really far on the edge of the book, and that gets really damaged. The pages do. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
So okay. So what I did is I literally just put the book to the side, took the centerfold, opened it up, and then took all those folded bits on the edges of both sides of the centerfold and flatten about with a tacking iron. And then I take the centerfold, put it back into the book at the centerfold, press it, and then and then fold it properly, repress it, and it will look way better. That one's actually I just switched that one out today. I also use the tacking iron when I'm if I'm trying to fix a spine roll. I flatten it out and I use the tacking iron to in the centerfold to kind of flatten the book a little bit before I put it into the press. Because even if you open a book, it's going to have like this weird like it's not going to want to lie flat, you know. And a lot of time I've had it happen before where you put it in there and it's not lying flat and you basically will fold the spine on itself. It's bad. You don't want to do that. You want it just to be flat. So I use the tacking iron I'll just put a piece of silicone release paper at the centerfold, and I just rub the tacking iron on the silicone release paper on a table just to kind of like flatten the book out a little bit more before I put it in the press. But tacking irons are great, and don't cheap out. I bought 2 tacking irons. They both crapped out, and then I finally spent like I think the last one I bought was over $100, but it's great. It's been working fine since I bought it. Something about the heating elements just not working.
Right. Nick was saying that he's spending too much to have his books pressed at CGC using classics, I guess, and it takes a year to get them book back. Especially if your plan is to make money by buying and selling and turning your money over, the pressing part, it saves you the fees of the pressing, but it saves you months of time. Because if you've put $200 into a book you want to sell for $400, the last thing you want to do is keep that $200 tied up. Because the books are classics waiting to be pressed by Matt Nelson, and you should just do it yourself, really. Most of the time. You
need to learn the skills, though. It's not like something. I mean, I can't stress the fact that they do a great job. I send books to them occasionally. I'm not gonna. I mean, even so, when I worked at Comic Link, we had a consignor. He was like one of our biggest consigners, and he pressed his own books. But even then, he would still send books in to Matt to have pressed. He didn't press everything himself, especially like complicated Golden Age books that can get a little weird. Golden Age books can be more difficult to press. The paper is heavier. The cover paper is heavier. They can have more severe damage. They can be difficult. A Silver Age book can actually be pretty easy unless it's really low grade. But pressing, a book that's an 8.0 to make it a 9.0, that's a piece of cake. That's just cleaning, a little bit of hydration, and then pressing. You're not doing really anything special. But low grade Golden Age and Silver Age keys can be difficult. That's why I would maybe recommend Matt, unless I don't know. I mean, it's not always. I mean, what was the Batman we bought, Ashley, that I pressed it, certified it, and wasn't happy with the grade, and we sent it in and got another.
Batman 37.
Yeah, got another grade bump after we sent it to Matt. So, there's something to be said for their service. But
Yeah.
but if you're trying to flip like Bronze Age books, no, that's no way. You got to do that yourself. You will not make any money. Not to mention tying up your money for 6 months. Think about how many times you could have flipped it over and over again. You probably could have flipped it one other time at least. And, so it didn't, there's that opportunity cost, right?
Yeah.
So,
I'm just looking at some of the questions because we're actually already over time, but I would like to not just like cut it off because I think we're having fun here. Earl asked an interesting question. He's asking, when a comic's graded and slabbed, why are points taken off a book if the cover's off center, even if it came out of the printer that way and bought it off the rack like a Miss Marvel 1? I've noticed this. We've talked about this in the past, how CGC grades books that have printing defects. And I'm not talking about things like a Venom Lethal Protector 1 that's missing the foil, so it's black. That's a proper error. Or a Fantastic Four 110 that was printed with pink instead of green ink. I think there's Avengers as well, Avengers 10 or something. There's two different colors of that one. But we're talking about a book that was cut wrongly, so the cover's not completely square.
The back cover wraps around to the front on the spine.
Yeah, sometimes you get a white bar on the spine, or other times they've just trimmed it badly so that, sometimes it's like, say, Uncanny X-Men, the title is slanted because of the way the book was cut. I don't think they actually grade any lower for those faults. I think when you sell the book, if it doesn't look as nice as an equivalent at the same grade, it won't sell for as much.
I know that I've seen a Batman 251 with a giant white stripe down the spine that got a 9.8. I mean, that's just one example, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily think that they actually do grade those lower. They might be a bit harder on them. I don't know.
There's a question about whether they count down for things like printers' veins, that's very common on Miss Marvel 1, where they how does a printer's vein happen? It's when they're folding the paper or something, it creates a ridge.
I think when it's running through the press, the paper gets wrinkled and it just presses the wrinkle into the paper.
Okay,
that's my guess.
We're not clear about whether or not a book can get a 9.8 with printer's veins. I'm not too sure. They're not that common. That's the problem. You don't see enough of them to really know.
I've always assumed that they can.
Yeah, because that's genuinely a printer's error, or
right.
A manufacturing defect. There are books like Giant Size X-Men 1 that have marks where the monster presses grab hold of the paper, and you see little grabber holes in the bottom of the pages. They don't count off for those. That's for sure.
No, they definitely do not. That's really common on was it ASM 361?
Yeah, and square bounds like Giant Size X-Men 1 or the annuals, they often have those holes in the bottom of the pages. They don't. Yeah. But I don't know. The answer is CGC do not publish their guidelines, so we can't be sure. But just based on the amount of stuff we've certified over the years, I'd say they don't count off for everything, but I think they probably do count off for some things. I don't know. Marvel chipping is one of those ones. Like, it's really a printer's defect because the blade wasn't sharp enough when it cut the covers. But I think they do count off for Marvel chipping.
I think they count off some, but maybe not as hard as, like, if those pieces were missing from abuse, I think they'd count off more.
We think.
I don't know.
We think. Okay, Sean, what do you think of this? John Cairns says, I have a pretty extensive collection with a lot of keys. None of them have been professionally graded. My question, should I? I know it's pretty pricey to have them graded. I have more than 3,000 comics that are all high grade, VF and up. What do you guys think?
I'd say if you don't plan on selling them, there's no reason to certify them. Um, that's my, I mean, but if you do plan on, if they're worth like $100 and you do plan on selling them, I mean, I don't know what it costs for like, just a regular person to certify a book, but you have to do the math, figure out how much it costs to have it certified. I mean, it makes a book way more liquid, right? So once it's certified, you can just be a novice and you can list that book and it's an 8.0. I mean, it says it right there on the label. It's an 8.0, whether you have 30 or 40 years in the industry or you just got started collecting comic books. So if you plan on selling it, then it could be worth your while. But if you're not selling, there's no reason, unless you just like certified books. I mean, like I said, if you like collecting 9/8, Spidey 9/8, then sure. And I use the word collecting, not investing, collecting. If you like collecting those books, then great. You should buy them. I have no problem with that. But
I would say that if you're thinking, is there a blanket answer to that question? There definitely isn't, because I certainly wouldn't certify every book in your collection, because some of them are just not going to be worth it, even in VF. Like I don't know what era you collect, John, but I'm guessing it might be a bit of everything. You might have some Silver Age, Bronze Age, Copper Age. Most of that stuff isn't going to be worth certifying. You're actually going to be putting more money into the plastic slab than it's actually worth it. But the key issues, if you have a run of Hulk and you certify the 180 and the 181, then you'll definitely get a good return on your investment.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I wouldn't certify like a Hulk 117 or anything like that. What's the point?
But even then, if you're not selling the 181, what's the reason for certifying it? Unless you anticipate needing to sell it quickly.
There's that, maybe in the future things will change. There might be a pandemic and you might need some money. But I don't think there's an easy answer to that question. It would depend on your list. We have a list of keys that I think about 1,000 key issues that you can find a link to down there somewhere. That's the list I actually use to buy collections. So again, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just telling you this what it is. And so if you went through that list and you pulled out, say, 50 of the books from your collection that are on that list and they're all VF or nicer, certify those. If you're going to certify anything, don't randomly send in. I often get offered collections where someone's randomly sent 25, 35 books to CGC. And yeah, they've sent in the obvious ones like Hulk 181, but then they've sent in random rubbish that should never be certified.
Right.
And it's worth less than the cost of the book being certified. It's worth less in the holder than it would be if they just sold it as it was before. So that's my opinion. There's no easy answer to the question, but it's a good question.
A GP analysis can help answer that question too. I mean, you could just, it sounds like, if you're competent grader, you can get a GP. You could just get it for 1 month and kind of just see what your books are worth in a holder in the given grade, and then make that determination of whether you think it's worth certifying or not.
So Nick asked a really good question. What are untapped comic areas that may have room for growth? War, westerns, funny books, etc. I think it's a really difficult thing to answer, because we don't know how taste is going to change. I mean, who knows how COVID-19 is going to change the comic book world? Like, there could be a shift in people's buying habits. People may not want to buy as many old pieces of paper anymore because they are worried about contamination or whatever. I just think that certain genres have had their day, and it's extremely unlikely that they're ever going to come back, like funny books, because they were created for an era that doesn't exist anymore. If you think about what there was in the way of entertainment back in the 1930s and 40s, the amount of competition for comic books now is so great that I think things like funny books, they're a real niche now. I just don't think they're going to come back, because they just belong to a totally different time. Westerns are a little different. they're still making some westerns, but they're no longer what you call a big part of the movie business. So I think war books actually have more potential than some others, because they are very hard to find in high grade. They're less common than some of the books out there, and I think that the crossover between superhero and war is really interesting to me. So I'd look for something like Sergeant Fury 1 and Our Army at War 83, because those are the two big war books that are actually Silver Age books. And they could, DC and Marvel could go in that direction. I mean, they have in a sense. Like Wonder Woman was a kind of a war movie, and so was Captain America: The First Avenger. But that's part of the market I think could expand, because it's an interesting way to take it. Like, how many more movies like Endgame can you make before you run out of ideas and need to go somewhere different? I just don't see Marvel or DC doing westerns, in which, and I don't see that. The other thing about westerns is that those people who were famous back in the 1930s and 40s are all dead now, so there aren't that many fans of John Wayne anymore. There aren't that many fans of Hopalong Cassidy or whatever. A great movie to watch, by the way, totally off topic, but it's Toy Story, because Toy Story taps into that whole collector's mindset thing in a really nice way. If you watch it from the point of view of how collecting works, Toy Story is the first one is a really touching and also very interesting way of looking at collectibles. I think the second one too, where he's found at a yard sale by a dealer who buys him and steals him and then tries to sell him to a Japanese collector. That whole Toy Story thing is really an interesting insight. And westerns belong to a different era in the way that funny books are probably even earlier. Funny books are like 1930s and westerns are like 1940s, 50s. I don't see that coming back the way it used to be. So I wouldn't be putting serious money into either of those. But war, possibly. Horror is huge. I mean, it has been for a while.
That ship has sailed.
No, I don't know. I don't know if that ship has sailed. I think
that's interesting. Yeah, but Ashley, I think you have a really interesting perspective. I mean, you came from the stamp hobby, so I think they might be really interested to hear your perspective on just like the newness of the hobby and what you think of that. I mean, I think that's a really interesting perspective. I think you should like talk about that a little bit.
I'll do it really quickly because I'm a bit aware of the time. I actually have a 7 o'clock. So I think that I'm sorry, I'm doing the Apple AirPod switching thing because they're running out. It's interesting to me because there are multiple stamps that have sold for 7 figures. I believe something like 100 times the $1 million barrier has been breached by stamps or related collectibles. But it's extremely rare for a comic book to sell for more than $1 million. And the ones that have been the really obvious ones. There's only 2 or 3, I think. I think Marvel Mystery 1 just sold for 1.24 million. Action 1 and Detective 27 are the only 2. And I think a Spidey...
AF-15 did.
Yeah, an AF-15 did, but it won't do it again. If another 9.6 comes to the market, it probably won't go for it. I don't know, though. Maybe. It might. There are more, though. There are more in the census now than when that one sold. So it's no longer the single highest graded. So there's been a 9.4 that sold for 800,000 recently. So yeah, it probably would sell for $1 million. But there are so few sales in the $1 million plus range. I think that over time, if you've got the money to put into those books now, those things could really seriously appreciate and become $5 million books, because they're just the hobby is not as mature as stamps and coin collecting. Coin collecting too. There are plenty of $1 million coins.
Oh, it happens every month practically.
Right. But when we see one in the market, maybe once or twice a year, we see a $1 million sale in comic books. So I think that comic book collecting has a long way to go from an appreciation standpoint. Whether that means anything to anyone listening to this, I don't know. I don't have $1 million.
No, hang on. But I think that trickles down. I mean, just because. I mean, when an AF-15 sells for $1 million, that affects every book below it. I it affects the 9.6, which affects the 9.4, which affects, and it cascades down the grades.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, yeah, okay, maybe we don't have $1 million to invest in a book, but I think that, the lack of maturity in the hobby, it's not just at the high end. I think it's throughout the grades. I think over time, those high sales are going to push prices up all the way down to like the 2.0s.
If there's a secret sauce, for investing in comic books, I would say buy and hold. Don't get trapped into the idea of trying to buy sell to make a little bit of profit. Just buy key issues, the really big key issues, and just hold them forever. Yeah. And over time, that's the way Warren Buffett treats shares. He buys stocks in companies, he holds them forever. And he believes in that stock, otherwise he wouldn't be buying it in the first place. So why would a pandemic or any other event change his mind about that stock? Unless the company is fraudulent or goes bust or something, he's going to keep his stocks in whatever forever. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why Berkshire Hathaway is where it is. And I think that the people at the top end of this hobby who bought the mile high keys when they came on the market have never sold them. And they probably won't unless they die.
Well, even then,
their families, if they're smart, won't sell them, because those books are never going to come back on the market. And when they do, they're just going to be crazy. They're just crazy.
John Verzel owned all the Mile High Captain Americas, and he passed away a couple years ago, and those books haven't hit the market. So,
right.
There you go.
So that's what I have to say about that. Let's start wrapping up. I'm just going to see if there's any more.
Someone asked about restored books.
Oh, did they? That's a
pricing restored books is, I cannot give you a formula for. I can't say that a restored book in an 8.0 is worth 50% of the value. It's not that simple. I think if you really need to price a restored book, I would highly recommend a GP analysis account and just look at values. And even then, you're going to have to do a little bit of extrapolating. It's not going to be clear unless there was a sale recently. And even then, you have to remember, GP analysis doesn't differentiate auction sales from fixed price sales. So one sale doesn't make a market, right? So if someone overprices something and some guy pulls the trigger on it, that doesn't mean that's what that book's worth. That's one guy's opinion. But in auction, it's, at least there was an underbidder willing to pay one increment lower than what the book sold for. So at least that's two people. And, and all the other people who bid in the auction up to that point. So I don't know. Obviously, the more data, the better. But restored books, I would honestly avoid them. But if you need to price one, you're just going to have to do some research on GP analysis and just estimate its value based on the data.
There's one obvious thing about restored books, and that is that the people that were restoring books in the 80s are now unrestoring them and charging people to have the books reverse restored, where it's not always possible, by the way, but when it is, it still makes financial sense to send a restored book to Matt Nelson to have him reverse the restoration and get it into a universal holder. And we have a Superman 1 that we bought in a collection last year. It looked okay in its restored state. When it came back, it's a 1.5 universal, but I mean, it looks like worms have eaten part of the cover, and it doesn't look that great. But it's a 1.5 universal. So it was worth paying to have the restoration removed in that case. And there are many instances of that where people buy a huge key issue, send it to get restoration removal, and then they get a universal grade, and it's way lower. Like it was an 8.0 restored, and now it's a 2.0 universal.
To be honest, if a book's an 8.0, it's not likely you're going to be able to have the restoration removed.
All right.
I mean,
I was just trying an example. Let's say like a Superman one or a Batman one or something like that that's got some removal restoration. If the grade drops dramatically, it still probably will sell for more.
Yeah, that this is true.
Then there's one more question I'm going to touch on. I'm going to wrap up.
Okay.
Jim asks, when we get a new collection to sell, could we forward a list to the collectors? Do we use eBay sold prices, GPA, or Go Collect data to price the comics? How do you calculate trade values for both parties? That's a fantastic question, and it's a long answer, so I'm gonna have to do it quickly. I would say what I do is I use my key list, which now is up here. I don't even need to look at it anymore, and I ask for pictures of those keys, and then I grade them from the pictures. Remembering the skill we talked about earlier, you need to be able to do that, and then I use GP analysis to predict how much it will sell for when it's in a CGC holder. So let's say it's a Hulk 181 and I think it's a 7.0. I look at GP prices, I look at the average sale in the last 90 days or so, and I say, okay, let's say it's $2,500. Okay, so I can afford to pay 60% of that to the seller, which is, I believe, $1,500, something like that. So I will price that book at $1,500. And I'll do that for the big keys in the collection and sometimes the minor keys, depending on how big the collection is, because I get offered about 500 collections a week and I just don't have time to break each collection down book by book. And then from that, I extrapolate, well, okay, so the rest of the stuff probably isn't worth certifying. It's probably worth X dollars per book. What's 65% of that? Add all that up, and that's the offer the collector gets. As for sending you guys a list, that would be it's beyond my working process, because we don't sell books raw and mostly, and we don't sell them directly to collectors. We use eBay because most of the time it's easier for us to do the administration. Like, say, Jim, you wanted like some of the Hulks from that collection. Now I've got to remember that you wanted them. Sean's got to remember to quarantine them in the collection quarantine. See what I did there? And and so we'd have to keep them separate for you. Somehow come out to a price that both you and I agree on. And then, do you want them to be pressed before we send them to you? Do you want them to be certified? It's just so complicated. We just don't do very much private selling like that. It's just too complicated, and we do too much volume. Remember, most dealers will sit on their books for years. When we get outbid by another dealer, it's because they're prepared to pay 90 to 95% of retail, sometimes more than that. So when a dealer beats us, it's because they don't price any margin into their offer. They're offering way higher than we do. Congratulations if you get that offer for your collection, but we have staff, we have taxes to pay, we have kids, we have a life. We are not going to cart books around for years from show to show in the hope of finding someone to buy that elusive book and make us 20%, maybe. No, we price 35% or more into our offers, and if we don't get it, we don't get it. And we are offered so much stuff that I used to lose sleep. I used to be so gutted when I lost a big collection, and now I barely even think about it. There will be another one along. We tell
the same way too, right?
We tell our staff, listen, when we hire a new person, and they're comic book people mostly, right? So they sit at their desk for the first time, and we always do this. It's like a first day prank. We say, oh, yeah, there's a box here. Do you mind opening that for us? And it's usually like a Daredevil 1 or a Hulk 181 or something. And it's like, you hear the intake of breath. And they're so excited to see this big key issue. And 3 months later, they're like, oh, another Daredevil 1. Like, you get really jaded because we see so much stuff. And most dealers don't have that advantage. They put ads in the yellow pages. They go to shows. That's what they do. They've always done it. And we disrupted that by doing a different business model. So we don't need to buy something no matter what. The money will be better off going into a collection later on where we know we're going to get margin. So that is a kind of a long, short answer to your question. I'm going to have to wrap up, I'm afraid, because I have a 7 o'clock. But I also wanted to say thank you to everyone who came. I didn't do too much selling.
Someone's asking another sub. If we're gonna do another one, and when?
Yes.
I'm really enjoying this is fun. I'm really enjoying this. So I think we definitely.
It's so much fun. And I didn't want to do any selling. I have mentioned a couple of the courses that we have. They're all down below here if you want to click on one of the buttons to buy one. I think someone actually did. Steve, thank you. If you want to donate anything, any amount, we will forward 100% of that donation to a charity of our choice, probably somebody that's doing good work out there in the front lines. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate you taking the valuable time out of your day, and the recording of this will be available for you to download and watch again if you really want to. And yes, we'll do this again. And now we know people will show up. We'll do this again.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed it. I think it started off a little rocky for me, but I think I finally got into the flow. And
are you really worried that we won't have enough stuff to talk about anymore?
What? Yeah. Shut up.
I'll talk to you all again soon. Thanks for coming. Please donate if you want to, and please buy something if you want to, but you don't have to. And thanks a lot. And we'll talk to you again. Cheers.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.